Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have 11 game slate here for DraftKings for Friday night. So if you're new to the channel, hit that like button and subscribe. Hitting that like button really helps out my channel, and I do greatly appreciate it. I do daily slate breakdowns for the NBA and NFL, where I talk through my favorite spin-up plays, mid-range options, and value plays. And then I go a little bit more in-depth in my free Patreon link down below. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter at HeartDFS. Before I get into the breakdown, I just want to ask you guys if you guys are interested in me doing live before locks. Please let me know in the comments, if you want that to happen. I'm thinking about starting that tonight or tomorrow and then kind of doing them at least 2 or 3 times a week. So if you want those, please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the slate breakdown. So for today's 11 game slate, obviously a ton of games. There's probably going to be a bunch of news that really shapes the slate. But as of right now, the personality of this slate is it's pretty interesting. I think it's a slate where you could definitely build a lineup with guys between 5K and 8K and have enough production and fancy points for you to get into cash as well as a takedown. Like, there are so many good plays between 5K and 8K on this slate that, I mean, it's hard not to like just 20 to 30 guys on this slate. And so it's going to be easier for some positions, but for a lot, there's just so many different plays. So we'll get into it. You guys see in a second here what I mean. So starting with Portland and Indiana, not a bad game environment here. I do think it's one of those games that could definitely go overlooked. Big news is Jeremy Grant is questionable. If he's out, it does open up some room for them to possibly start a guy like maybe Shaden Sharp, a guy like Trenton Wofford off the bench, which could open up a little bit of value. It wouldn't be the best because they'll come in and be very low usage guys, but you can definitely punt play with those value plays. Otherwise, Dame, Simons, Hart, they'll continue to kind of do their own thing. No real standout plays. Maybe Simons a little bit bump, maybe Lillard a little bit more of a bump as well. I think my favorite play would be Nurkic there at 6,000. The minutes are the only questionable thing here just because he is pretty foul prone at times, but if he's getting his full allotment of minutes, it should be at least 30, maybe 33, 34 if he's playing well. And he still, has a very, very solid upside. So I think my favorite play for the Portland side is going to be Nurkic. And I don't mind getting into Lillard or Simons, but they're more secondary options. For Indiana, I love Haliburton. His price is slowly coming down. He had a very solid game. It went to overtime versus Philly, but we know he has very solid upside into the 50, 60 plus. So at 9,000, I think it's a very, very good price tag here for Haliburton. The rest of the team, just more secondary plays. Like, I don't mind getting to Miles Turner or Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield had the big game last game. But I really, it's just, prefer getting to Haliburton. The rest of the guys are more secondary options. Sure, you can go to these, lower tier secondary value plays for the Pacers, like a Benedict, like a Naismith, Nembhard, Jalen Smith. Sure, I don't think you get to do it. Really just prefer getting to Haliburton. That's really it. For Chicago, we have DeMar DeRozan, Vooch, Zach LaVine. It's pretty much the same breakdown for Chicago as I say every time. The safest option is going to be DeMar, and Zach's probably going to be the most boomer bust out of the three. But for this matchup, I really, really like Vooch. Reason is there's no Embiid, so Vooch, they should look to get him involved, in this game, quick, right at the beginning of the game and through the whole game. So I really like Vooch here. Great matchup. He should be able to dominate, whether it's PJ Tucker, Montrezl Harrell guarding him, whoever it is. Vooch should have his way. So I do really like Vooch here at 7,300. Rest of the team, Isle has been productive recently. I'd kind of pump the brakes on him, especially if Caruso plays. I do think it's a huge hit for Isle. I don't think we can expect him to go for double-digit points every time. As we saw beginning of the season when he was getting those minutes, he was very, very up and down and not the best. So I will say that he is a question mark there. Pat Williams, one of those value plays you can definitely play, had his best game of the season as a value play versus Brooklyn last game. But we know he has that upside. So, those guys are there. Crucial's back. It definitely takes a hit on a guy like Io. If he's out, you could possibly take a shot on a guy like Io or Kobe White, maybe Dragic, but you really just prefer getting to Vooch, and that's it. For Philadelphia, big news obviously is Embiid's out. So last game they started Harden, Harris, Melton, who they started? They started Harden, Maxey, Harris, I believe it was Melton and PJ Tucker. So we'll have to see who they start in place of center. But I think right now, really, really like Harden and Maxey. They're both the standout plays for me. Maxey finally saw close to a normal allotment of minutes. He saw 37. The game did go to overtime, so he got a few extra. So I do think he's very, very close to seeing his full run. So I do love Maxey here in this matchup versus Chicago. Same thing with Harden. It's really hard not to really like these guys because, as I said, with Chicago, they give up huge, huge games to the star players of the opposing team. We saw that with who the Bulls recently play. Let's look real fast. Sorry. We saw that with Cleveland, where Donovan Mitchell went for 102 fantasy points, 71 real life points. We saw that with KD. He went up for, I think it was like 38 points, something like that. It was like 65 fantasy points. So love targeting these guys against the Bulls. Harris, Melton, they both look like pretty solid secondary options. I don't mind them. The price point seems kind of about right for a guy like Tobias Harris. He can have decent upside. I'd say 35 to 40 fantasy point range for him, so I don't mind him. Melton looks like a solid play there. Should play the minutes, but I know when it comes to usage, Maxey and Harden are still going to lead the team, so everything's going to go through them. So I do like both of those guys. And I do have a good amount of interest in Harrell. Hopefully he starts. If he doesn't, I still don't mind taking a shot on him. Played 28 minutes last game. He's very, very productive. He's not always the most productive, and it's not the best matchup going against Vooch. But yeah, Harrell at 4,500, I think he'd be very, very solid. And then you could take a shot on a guy like PJ Tucker, sure. Niang should get a little bit more run. He saw 17. He could possibly see mid-20s. He's just kind of very random. And that's about it. So a good amount of interest on Philadelphia. For the Knicks in Toronto, Randall, Brunson, we know they're going to have all the usage. Their price points are, I think, about right now. Not the best matchup here. So they're more secondary plays for me. I don't mind going to them. Obviously, Randall's been fantastic this year. He's been averaging about 60 fantasy points the past 2 weeks. Brunson, he is starting to up his game. He was a little bit injured. But yeah, last game when he was a core play, he was fantastic there against the Spurs. 45, 38, 55, all past 3 games. So once again, he's going to play a massive amount of minutes. So I don't mind getting to him just because of the minutes thing, but due to the price points, not real standout plays for me. I'd prefer getting to a guy like Quickly, who saw 46 minutes in a 48-minute game. I mean, that's insane. So yeah, I mean, if they're going to play their guys that many minutes, I do have some interest in Quickly. Grimes is there. Mitchell Robinson's always worth a tournament option. It just comes down to the foul trouble. If you can stay out of foul trouble, he's a very, very solid play at 5,400. Cam Reddish, I feel bad for him. He just needs a team that believes in him. They should trade him to the Spurs. I think he could go off if he got starter minutes and he's option 1 or 2. All he needs is a year of getting that confidence, averaging 20 to 25 points per game. He has that upside. He has that potential. But yeah, that's enough for my Cam Reddish rant. And that's really it. So moving on to Toronto. Pascal looks solid here, 10-2. Van Fleet was huge for me last game. 47 minutes, 65 fantasy points. But as you can see from his box score, he's one of those guys who can go for 18 to 70 fantasy points. You really don't know what you're getting and when. But the minutes should be a guarantee. That's the only thing you know with Van Fleet is he should be playing pretty much 38 to 40 minutes a game. So at that price tag, I do have interest once again in Van Fleet. Pretty solid matchup going against Jalen Brunson. We know is not the best defensively. These secondary guys, I don't mind it. They are running their starters into the ground. So that's what's good about Toronto is all 5 of their starters are going to play a ton of minutes. Gary Trent has been probably the second best in the past 4 games alongside Pascal. Actually, he may be technically the best the past 4 games just in terms of his scoring, 20, 35, 32, 22. So he's been very, very solid. If you want to ride that hot streak, he is scoring dependent, but yeah, he's not been bad. So do have interest in some of these Raptors guys. They're not standout plays. Maybe Van Fleet is close to that, but yeah, they all look very, very solid just because of the minutes they're getting. Don't think you need to go to any value just because they're not playing their guys much. Brooklyn and the Pelicans. Once again, love KD. I'm not really sure why his price has dropped all the way down to this. Another one of those spots where you can definitely see him going for 40 plus real life points. So I love him here against the Pelicans. Just really hope this game stays close because the Pelicans are shorthanded. Kyrie looks a little bit too cheap here once again. He's been having very, very solid upside. So they both look great. You can definitely get to Claxton. He has the upside. Same thing with Ben Simmons. It's just the minutes have been a huge question mark for him. If I knew Ben Simmons was going to get 32, 33 minutes, he'd be an absolute lock at that price tag. But it's one of those things, he could be playing bad and he'll get pulled. So not a huge interest in Ben Simmons right now for me. Royce O'Neal should play a good amount of minutes, so you could definitely go to him. He's a decent value play. TJ Warren is questionable. If he's in, doesn't really change much. You can get to him, you can get to Steph, but if he's out, it does help Steph out a little bit more. He's seen a lot more minutes recently. He's been shooting the ball well, so you can definitely go to him as a value play. He's super score independent, super risky. He could definitely go out there and get you like 5 fantasy points in like 25 minutes, but he looks like a decent value play on the slate. On to the Pelicans. Kind of the same breakdown as of yesterday. CJ is going to be a very solid play here at 8,500. Going to have to do pretty much everything for this team to stay in the game. J-Val looks pretty solid as well. We love targeting Brooklyn with some bigs. So J-Val looks great here. The minutes have been very, very solid on him recently, especially if you can see 30 minutes or more. That's a great price tag to get JV at. These secondary plays like a Marshall, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, you can get to them. One of them should have a solid game that could get you 25, 30 fantasy points. So I don't mind getting to them, but they're more just secondary options for me. And then if Larry Nance is back, sure, you can take a shot on him. It does hurt J-Val a little bit. Same thing with Hernan Gomez. Whoever's back, you can take a shot on as that backup center. If they're all back, no real standouts for me. You can always take a shot on Alvarado as cheap value. Washington and OKC. Porzingis looks great here. We know Beal is out. So Porzingis and Kuzma really, really elevates their game. I think I prefer Kuzma at 8,400 just because of the cheaper price tag. He's a little bit similar ceiling. He should be very involved offensively when it comes to passing the ball, scoring. So I do like Kuzma a good amount here against OKC in this matchup. Beal looks like pretty solid value. He should see about 30 minutes, should see about 30 fantasy points as well. Don't mind him. Hachimura should see a little bit more minutes as well, maybe closer to 30. He's been productive recently, so a lot to like here on this Washington side. Gafford, he's been great. He's been staying out of foul trouble too. So I do like Gafford a good amount at 4,600. So there's a lot to like on this Washington side. I think my two favorites are going to be Kuzma and Gafford, but Porzingis is right there, close behind those two. I do like Morris a good amount. Hachimura is interesting. And I do like Denny. He's one of those guys who's definitely going to be a little bit of a sleeper here on Washington. He's one of those guys. He's like a mini Kuzma where he's not going to shoot the ball a ton. He will look to score, but it's just more about his playmaking. Like, as you can see, 13, 7, 6, 11, 12, 3. That last game, he came in, did a ton in that second half when Beal was out. 12, 4, and 3. He's had 16, 10, and 4, 11, 10, and 5. So he's kind of like a better Kendrick Williams where he'll just go out there, do a little bit of everything. So there's a lot of interest for me in this Washington side. I think for right now, I'm going to throw in Denny and Gafford and then maybe, come back. OKC, I do think SGA is a little bit too cheap here. I mean, he's been fantastic this season. His fantasy output the past 3 games hasn't been the best, but we know we can get 50, 60 plus from him. Giddey looks okay as a secondary play. Jalen Williams is there. He's been better recently. Don't mind him. Lou Dort's always there. His price is coming down a bit as well. So, I mean, a little bit of interest in these secondary pieces for the OKC Thunder, but really just prefer SGA. In terms of like their big man, they've been starting Kendrick Williams. He's been solid. He should see at least 20 minutes, maybe even more. They could start Muscala. They've been starting, I think Jalen Williams is out. He's been terrible. So maybe a few more minutes for Kendrick Williams, Muscala. Maybe they'll bring up a guy like Umori, Abasley. Maybe he gets run. He had a DMP the other game. So just big question marks when it comes to kind of who's filling in that center role. But I think the two that stand out for me are going to be Kendrick Williams and a Mike Muscala. So I don't mind taking the shots on them. They're pretty cheap there at their price tags. For Charlotte and Milwaukee, this is what I was kind of saying at the beginning of the video, guys. There's a ton of options between like 5 to 8K, even cheaper guys who look very, very good on today's slate. But yeah, Charlotte versus Milwaukee, LaMelo Ball looks solid here. He's been very, very good in terms of his fantasy output, so I don't mind him. Oubre's out, so Rozier, Plumlee, they look decent. Hayward, if he's back, he looks okay. Don't mind getting to Washington. If Hayward's out once again, Washington looks like a very solid play here. He should see the minutes. We know he is the upside. It just comes down to if he can stay out of foul trouble, and that's really it. If he can stay out of foul trouble, he should be aggressive. And if this game stays close, it's going to be because of most likely LaMelo, probably Rozier, and a little bit of PJ. So do have interest there. You can definitely go to McDaniels, who's super chalky last game. He should see the minutes. He's decently productive. Don't mind him. That's really it. Dennis Smith Jr. saw about 23 minutes. You could take a shot on one of their big men if you want, but I don't think it's necessary. Cody Martin is back, but he only saw 21 minutes. I do think he'll still be on a minutes limit, but if he wasn't, I think he'd be my favorite value play on that side. Milwaukee side, Giannis should be good to go. Drew Holiday should be good to go, but maybe keep an eye out on that. With Drew Holiday back, Giannis's usage only comes down about 2 percentage points, so he looks fantastic. It's a fantastic matchup here against Charlotte. So if you want to spend up for someone today, he looks like the clear and best spend up just in terms of matchup. I don't know about the price. The price is solid. I mean, he's averaged 80 fantasy points pretty much the past 4 games. So you can definitely go to him. Fantastic matchup here. I don't think it's a priority, but it just depends on if Drew Holiday is going to get a full allotment of minutes. If he is, I think Drew looks really solid there too at that price tag. Then it takes a bump to guys like Portis, Lopez, if those two guys are both in and both playing their starter minutes. For the rest of the games, we get Detroit and San Antonio. Bogdan looks, for Detroit, it's kind of the same breakdown every week, every game. You know, these guys are all at pretty solid price tags. Bogdan, Hayes, Ivy, Burks, Duran. I mean, they all look great here. The standouts for me would probably be Hayes and I'd say Burks and Duran. But yeah, I mean, there's a decent amount of interest in Detroit. It's a great matchup here versus San Antonio. As I said, there's just a ton of options in this 5 to 6K range that are easily playable and look very solid. Keldon Johnson with no Vassell, he looks good. Poldo looks good here. Trey Jones, don't mind him. And then Zach Collins, you can definitely get to him. He's been getting solid minutes. He's been a solid producer. Jay Rich is good to go. I don't mind him. He's point guard, small forward eligible. He gets a huge usage bump with Vassell being out. Bates TF is questionable. So I think my favorite on this side is going to be Jay Rich if he's going to be good to go. And I do like Keldon Johnson. Poldo looks pretty interesting. So a lot to like there in that game. Pretty disgusting because those two teams are terrible. But yeah, a lot to like. The big news for this Cleveland game is Donovan Mitchell's out. Darius Garland is questionable. Looking like he might be doubtful once again. If he is, load up on Karis LeVert. He looks fantastic there at that price tag. You could definitely get 2 of these bigs. Not the best matchup going against Aaron Gordon and Jokic, but you can definitely get to them. And then Sadie Osman off the bench should see a good amount of minutes. He's a very, very solid price point. Very solid value play there. And you could definitely get to a guy like Raul Neto, who saw 17 minutes and then 21, and he's decently productive. Not going to be super, super aggressive, but he could definitely get you there at 3,400 in about 20 to 25 minutes if Garland's going to be out. If Garland's in, I don't mind still getting into a guy like Karis LeVert, who should see a good amount of usage as well. And that's really it for Cleveland. On to Denver. We have Jokic, looks solid. You know, of course, the frustrating thing is, of course, I play Jokic the first time in like 3 weeks. You know, every time I played him, he's gone for 60 fantasy points or less. But the few times I didn't, there was a stretch where he went for 88, 95, 82, 80. But every time I play him, it's 60 or less. Of course, I played him yesterday, 34. But I mean, yeah, Jokic, we know we're getting him. He looks fantastic. Jamal Murray, if he does play, he only had to play 21 minutes. So I do think these guys will be able to play on a back-to-back. A guy like Jamal Murray, who usually sits them, he looks pretty good here. Gordon, all these secondary pieces, sure, you can get some. I don't mind them. It's really just the top 2 for me. Moving on to the Clippers and Minnesota. I think another sneaky game here you could definitely stack, be contrarian. Paul George and Kawhi are both guys who have sat on back-to-backs this year, but that game was like a 50-point blowout, so Paul George only played 14. I think Kawhi only played 12 minutes, so they both should be good to go. He played 18. I'm expecting both of them to play. I think they said they're going to play, but we'll have to keep an eye out on that. If they are playing, I do like Kawhi, you know, even though he's coming off that very disappointing game. You know, he's a solid price tag right there. Zubac, you can definitely get to him. Don't mind him. He was decently productive when he was out there. But yeah, it's really just those two for me, Zubac and Kawhi. You can definitely still get to Paul George, but if both of them are going to be out, then we're going to have to look to the value plays. Zubac would be solid. Morris would be very solid. Powell would be good. Reggie would be very good. We could get to a Luke. We could get to a Man. So really just kind of have to wait for that news. Thankfully, it's not like the last game, and we should hopefully get it like an hour before. On the other side, Edwards, I think he looks great there. Russell, very solid GPP option. Gobert has been was good in that last game. Before that, he was terrible, so I don't mind taking a shot on him. That really does it for the Minnesota side. On to Miami versus Phoenix. Just a disgusting game here. It just looks terrible. But on the Miami side, at their price points, I think everyone is just kind of there. No real standouts. If you want to take a shot on a guy, I'd say it'd be Oladipo. He's sitting 30 minutes or more the past 3 games. So he's a very cheap price tag right there. On the Phoenix side, I mean, they're either going to get blown out by 40 or they're going to win by like 20. It makes no sense. They're just like Memphis. So I think Paul, Ayton, Bridges all look very solid. Their price tags, not the best matchup. Pretty slow game here against Miami, but if they're going to have a good game and stay in, it's going to be because of those 3. Payne is out, so that could open up some room for a guy like Washington to see about 10-ish minutes. You really need a blowout for him to see anything more than that because he is strictly just the backup to Chris Paul. But sure, you could take a shot on him. But yeah, not a ton of interest in Phoenix for me right now. Rather get to other plays. And then the last game, Atlanta and the Lakers. Another great spot here for the Atlanta guys. Trae Young looks great. Murray looks solid. Clint Capella is questionable. I don't think he's going to go. He's listed out. So, yeah, once again, we're going to get John Collins starting in Okongwu. I mean, I have a good amount of interest in these Atlanta guys. The standouts for me are going to be John Collins and Trae Young, but we could definitely get to these secondary pieces. And then on the Atlanta side, or excuse me, the Lakers side, LeBron should be back. So, he looks like a solid spin up play there. Not a necessity for me, even though it's a great matchup, and we saw what he did against Atlanta the other day. Russ, at the price tag, with LeBron back, don't think it's to go there. Thomas Bryant, should see about 30-ish minutes. He looks pretty solid. But yeah, no real standouts. Lonnie is out. Reeves is out. So it just opens up a little bit more minutes for a guy like Pat Bev, maybe Troy Brown if he's back, Wenyen, maybe Toscano Anderson. But really right now it's just going to be kind of LeBron, Russ, maybe, and Thomas Bryant for me. You could take a shot on Schroeder. He should be a little bit more aggressive if those other guards are out. But yeah, not a lot of interest in that Lakers side. But yeah, that's going to do it for the breakdown. To kind of finish out this lineup, as I said, I do like a good amount of guys between that 10 or that 5 to 8K range. So let's go to power forwards real fast. We have about 6,000 we can work with per position. So right now, 6,000-ish. Let's see here. Do you want to pay down a little bit at this position? I do think the power forward spot is definitely the weakest, just with the news right now. Let's just go with Kenrich Williams. Where'd he go? Right there. He should see about 20-ish minutes. He's been productive, kind of like a Denny play. They're going to do a little bit of everything when they're out there, so I don't mind him. Going to the guard spot, about 7,100 left over. Good amount of interest here in guys like Jamal, Russell. Pay down for guys like Quickly. You should see huge minutes. Bogdan is there as well. Gary Trent. You can ride the hot streak. You can pay down even more for a guy like Trey Jones, who looks interesting. But I think, as I said, where'd he go? If Richardson's in, I do like him a good amount there. He's a little bit scoring dependent, but he should pick up some more usage when it comes to rebounds and assists. He's been very solid at that when he's been playing. So it just comes down to if he can hit his shots. Hopefully sees the minutes. It's never a guaranteed pop. He could definitely see 20. Yeah, I do have a good amount of interest in Richardson as a cheaper value play. And that leaves us with a forward spot for 10-4. You can get to Kevin Durant. I love that. Porzingis, Anthony Edwards, a lot of good options here. So right now I'm just going to throw in KD. I don't mind this lineup. You get Maxey, you get Harden, a great matchup against Chicago. You get LeVert. If Garland's out, he looks fantastic. Even if Garland's in, LeVert looks really good. I do like this lineup a decent amount. It'll probably change with injury news. But yeah, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.